My ex told the judge I was crazy. Then my 7-year-old daughter played a video that changed everything. The moment my ex looked the judge straight in the eyes and said, "She's unstable. She lies to our daughter. I want full custody," I felt the air leave my lungs. He said it so calmly, as if he were stating a fact, and the judge seemed to believe him. I wanted to speak. I wanted to scream, cry, explain something, but nothing came out. I just sat there, heart racing, frozen in that hard courtroom chair while the man who used to tell me he loved me painted me as a danger to the only person I love more than anything, my daughter. Mila was sitting behind me, holding my mother's hand. She's only 7 years old, but she was watching everything. Her big brown eyes locked onto mine. She could see it. She could feel it. I was drowning, and no one was throwing me a rope. Damon, my ex-husband, wore a navy blue suit, like he was about to give a TED talk, calm, smooth, perfectly rehearsed. The same man who used to scream at me in the car for ordering the wrong takeout was now sitting in front of a judge looking like the picture of responsibility. He was charming. He had always been. That was the problem. The judge asked if I had anything to say in response. I opened my mouth, but all that came out was a shaky breath. My lawyer looked at me silently. The courtroom was completely silent. My hands trembled. I was about to lose my daughter, and I felt like no one could see what was really happening. Then I heard a voice, small, clear, and firm, from behind me. "Your Honor, I brought a video from Dad's phone. I think you should see it." Everything stopped. The gallery turned. The bailiff looked confused. Damon's face lost all color. And for the first time that morning, Judge Harmon looked surprised. Mila stood up, still holding her pink school tablet with both hands. She wasn't crying. She wasn't scared. She looked braver than I had ever seen her. She walked to the front, past the wooden benches, past the man trying to take her away from me, and handed her tablet to the judge. I didn't even know she had it with her. I didn't know what she had recorded. I didn't even know she knew how to record on Damon's phone. But I knew something had just changed. The judge took the tablet. "What is this?" she asked. Mila's voice was soft but steady. "From last weekend. Dad said those things when I was supposed to be asleep. But I wasn't. I heard him, and he was really mad. And I thought, if you didn't believe Mom, maybe you'd believe him." My heart broke. My daughter had done what I couldn't. She had stood up. She told the truth. And suddenly, the courtroom, the place where I had felt the smallest, belonged to her. Before the courtroom, before the suit and the silence and the judge's cold eyes, before the video, it was just us. Me and Mila. Our apartment wasn't big. It had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and the kind of creaky floors that groaned every time you crossed them after 10 p.m. But Mila didn't mind. She loved it. She called it our nest. She said the pink curtains in her room made it look like the inside of a cotton candy cloud. Most nights, she'd lie in bed with her stuffed penguin, Pepper, and ask me to read her 2 stories instead of 1. I always said yes. I worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, which paid just enough to keep us afloat. My mother, Caroline, lived a few blocks away and helped watch Mila when I had deadlines. She's the kind of mom who doesn't always say the right thing, but she always shows up. She brought lasagna without warning, scrubbed my bathroom when I wasn't looking, and told me, "You're doing better than you think, Arya." And for a while, I believed her. Mila was 7 years old. She was smart, soft-hearted, and observant in ways that made adults uncomfortable. She asked questions that made you think twice before lying. One time, she caught me crying in the kitchen late at night and didn't say anything. She just brought her blanket and wrapped it around my shoulders. That was the kind of child she was. Our favorite thing was the truth jar. I started it when Damon and I first separated. I told her that anytime she had a question or wanted to talk about something confusing or scary, she could write it down and put it in the jar. We would read one note together each night. Some were silly, "Why do people snore?" Others cut deep. "Will Dad stop loving me if I stay with you?" I always told her the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The divorce had not been clean. Damon wanted control more than custody. Mila agreed to joint custody on paper, but in practice, he pushed for more. He questioned every parenting decision I made, criticized what I fed her, complained if I picked her up 2 minutes late. And during his weekends, Mila came home withdrawn and quiet. Sometimes she didn't even speak to me until Tuesday. I mentioned it in court, but Damon knew how to present himself. He was a former college athlete turned sales executive, the type who made people laugh and remembered everyone's name. He wore confidence like a second skin. In public, he was all smiles. In private, he could explode over a spilled juice or a lost charger. I kept a record. I documented everything, emails, messages. I had a folder full of texts where he accused me of being unstable, where he called me names no child should ever hear their father use about their mother. But I never showed them to Mila. I thought I was protecting her. One night, after a particularly tense drop-off, Mila asked me if I was ever scared around Dad. I paused. She looked down at her cereal and said, "I am. But I don't think I'm supposed to say that." That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I had failed her, by not fighting harder, by trying too hard to keep the peace. A few weeks later, Damon filed for full custody. He said I was emotionally harming Mila, that I lied to her about him, that I couldn't provide stability. His lawyer submitted statements claiming I was erratic, unreliable, and mentally unfit to co-parent. When I read those documents, my hands shook. I had to sit down on the floor. Caroline sat next to me, held my wrist, and said, "You have the truth." That's enough. I wanted to believe her. But in court, the truth isn't loud. It's buried in evidence and twisted in strategy. Damon's lawyer painted a picture of a woman falling apart. My lawyer told me not to get emotional, not to speak unless spoken to, not to interrupt. But inside, I was screaming. Mila saw it all, every tear I tried to hide, every time I whispered, "It's going to be okay," even when I wasn't sure it would be. I didn't know she was watching so closely. I didn't know she was listening. I certainly didn't know she was planning anything at all. She was only 7 years old. But somehow, she understood what none of us had said out loud. She knew the truth mattered. And she knew the court needed to see it for itself. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Monday morning. I barely slept the night before. Mila had fallen asleep clinging to Pepper, her stuffed penguin, and I sat beside her bed until dawn, just watching her. My chest felt heavy, like something was pressing down on me. I knew this wasn't just a legal matter. It was a fight for her life as she knew it, for the one thing I had poured every part of myself into protecting. That morning, my mother came with us. She wore her silky church scarf, the one she only brought out when she needed courage. I think she knew I didn't have much left. Mila wore a blue dress with sunflowers and packed her school tablet in her backpack like she always did. She didn't say much in the car, just stared out the window, humming a tune I didn't recognize. When we entered the courthouse, Damon was already there. He wore the same navy blue suit he had worn at our rehearsal dinner. Only this time, there was no warmth behind his smile, only calculation. His lawyer stood beside him with a clipboard in hand, perfectly composed, speaking in low tones that sounded rehearsed. Damon turned and looked at me, then at Mila. He smiled and waved like nothing was wrong. Mila didn't wave back. The courtroom felt like a stage, all polished and cold. My name was on the file, Damon's too. But the person on trial wasn't just me. It was the version of me he had created on paper. When Judge Harmon entered, the room fell into silent tension. She was tall, middle-aged, and didn't waste time. She looked directly at Damon's lawyer and said, "You may begin." His lawyer immediately began painting the picture. He described Damon as a stable father, mentioned his steady job, his clean home, his efforts to protect Mila from my emotional unpredictability. He presented texts between Damon and me, completely taken out of context. In one, I told Damon I was overwhelmed and exhausted. He presented that as evidence of mental instability. In another message, I asked him not to raise his voice around Mila. That was twisted into a claim that I was controlling and manipulative. I sat there while the person I had once shared a life with turned everything I had ever said into ammunition. Damon added his own voice when asked. "She's not well," he said, calm and composed. "She tells our daughter that I'm the bad guy. It confuses her. She's making Mila afraid of me. I'm not trying to take her away out of spite, I'm doing this to protect her." Protect her. That word hit me like a slap. Judge Harmon looked at me. "Ms. Lennox, do you have a response?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The words were in my chest, pounding to be let out, but my voice betrayed me. My heart raced. My tongue felt heavy. All I could do was look at Mila, who sat behind me, her little legs swinging off the bench. She gave me a look I'll never forget, worried, but not afraid. My lawyer cleared her throat and offered a weak reply about my emotional resilience and how feeling overwhelmed is a natural part of parenting as a single mother. It wasn't enough. It didn't even scratch the surface of what was truly happening. No one mentioned the time Damon cursed me out over the phone while Mila was in the room. No one asked why Mila had started wetting the bed again after her weekends with him. None of that made it into his version of the story. The judge scribbled notes lightly. Then Damon stood up again and said, "Your Honor, I want full custody. I believe my daughter is being emotionally harmed, and I don't think shared custody is in her best interest." I felt the walls closing in. My breath shortened. My hands gripped the arms of my chair. I looked at Mila again, not knowing how I could possibly protect her from what was unfolding right in front of her. That's when Mila let go of my mother's hand, stood up, and walked forward. She didn't ask permission. She didn't hesitate. "Your Honor," she said, "I brought a video from Dad's phone. I think you should see it." The room went still. Damon's face went blank. My mother gasped. I turned in my seat, eyes wide. Mila was standing there, holding her school tablet, shoulders squared, voice firm. Judge Harmon looked at her. "Excuse me?" the judge asked. Mila raised the tablet a little higher. "It's from last weekend." He didn't know I was awake, but I was. I heard what he said, and I thought it might matter. No one spoke. Not Damon. Not his lawyer. Not even the judge. And for the first time since the hearing began, I felt something shift. Mila had brought more than a video. She had brought the truth into the room. And everyone felt it. Mila stood in the center of the courtroom, holding her tablet like a shield. Her sunflower dress looked one size too small, the hem brushing her knees, but she didn't fidget. She didn't look back for reassurance. She stood alone in front of the judge. "I brought a video from Dad's phone," she said again. "I think you should see it." Judge Harmon looked to the bailiff. "Bring it here," she said. Mila walked the few steps forward and handed the device to the bailiff, who then passed it to the judge. Silence stretched across the room like a taut rope. Damon's jaw was clenched, his lips pressed into a thin, unreadable line. His lawyer glanced from him to the tablet and back again. Neither moved. The judge turned the screen toward herself and pressed play. For a moment, there was nothing. Just the sound of ambient noise, the kind of distant hum you hear late at night when the outside world has gone still. Then came his voice, loud, harsh, not the smooth, composed tone he had used just minutes before in court. It was unmistakably Damon. He was yelling. "You think you're so smart, huh? Go ahead, try telling someone, see what happens. You'll end up living in some foster home. And don't think your precious mother can save you. She's pathetic." A chair scraped. A plate clattered. Mila's voice, quiet and scared, whispered, "I'm sorry." He interrupted her. "Don't talk back. You're lucky I even let you come. If you tell her one word, I swear." The judge pressed pause. She didn't say anything right away. She just sat there, staring at the frozen screen. Damon shifted in his seat. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something quickly and in a panic. But the judge raised her hand to silence him. "Where did this come from?" she asked in an even voice. Mila responded without hesitation. "He left his phone on the couch. I heard him yelling. I wanted to record it. I was scared, but I thought that if someone heard it, maybe they'd believe me, and Mom. My chest tightened. My daughter had been afraid. She had made a plan. And she carried it out, with more courage than most adults I know. I wanted to run to her, to wrap her in my arms, to tell her she never should have had to do any of this. But I stayed in my seat, because this moment belonged to her. Damon spoke, his voice suddenly forced and defensive. Your Honor, that recording is taken completely out of context. I was disciplining her. She was misbehaving, Anne. Enough, the judge said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a blade. Damon stopped talking immediately. Judge Harmon turned to Mila. Thank you for being brave, she said. You may return to your seat. Mila nodded and walked back, her steps slower now, the weight of the moment beginning to show on her shoulders. My mother pulled her onto her lap and held her tightly. The judge looked at me. Ms. Lennox, do you have anything further to add? This time, I found my voice. No, Your Honor. I don't. I believe my daughter said it all. The judge nodded once, then leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them and looked across the courtroom. In light of this evidence, she said, I am ordering an immediate review of all custody arrangements. Until that is completed, full temporary custody will be granted to Ms. Lennox. Supervised visits only for Mr. Blake. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Blake from the courtroom until further notice. Damon stood up, stunned. You can't be serious. Sir, the bailiff said, stepping forward. He looked like he wanted to argue, but instead, Damon turned and walked out, his lawyer rushing after him. The courtroom emptied slowly after that, but we remained seated. Mila was quiet, her head resting on my mother's shoulder. Eventually, I stood up and walked over to them. I knelt beside her. You were very brave, I said. She nodded but didn't speak. I could see it was hitting her now, the weight of what she had done. She hadn't just told the truth. She had stood up to someone who had spent years teaching her to stay silent. And in doing so, she had changed everything. The moment Damon left that courtroom under the watch of the bailiff, the whole atmosphere shifted. It felt like someone had opened a window in a room where we had all been holding our breath. For the first time in days, I could inhale. Not fully relaxed, but enough to remember that I still had a voice. A heartbeat. The judge left the bench shortly after issuing her order. Her expression never changed, but I saw something different in her eyes when she looked at Mila, a silent recognition. Not pity. Not surprise. Respect. I gathered our things slowly, my fingers trembling slightly as I packed Mila's bag. She was still curled in my mother's arms, tired, but alert. Her tablet rested beside her on the bench, the screen still dark after the video. I reached for her hand. Do you want to come with me? I asked. She nodded and slid off the bench. As we walked out of the courtroom, people watched us. Some looked away quickly. Others held their gaze a little longer. One woman mouthed the word brave as we passed. Outside the courtroom doors, I knelt down to Mila's level, my hands gently resting on her arms. Are you okay? She shrugged. Then finally said, I didn't want to do it, but I had to. I know, I said. I'm so proud of you. You shouldn't have had to carry that alone. She looked at the ground. I didn't know if they would believe me. My throat tightened. They did, because you told the truth. And because you were strong enough to stand up when no one else could. Mila looked up at me, her eyes shining with silent tears. Does this mean I don't have to go back to Dad's house? I pulled her into my arms, holding her as tightly as I could without breaking her. You're safe. That's what matters. The court officers gave us a few more instructions, including a temporary supervision schedule for Damon. He would be evaluated by a court-appointed counselor before any additional access to Mila. It wasn't over. There would be more hearings, more paperwork, more days in courtrooms that felt like battlegrounds. But the hardest part was behind us. That afternoon, we went straight to my mother's house. I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want Mila to return to our apartment and feel the silence that sometimes echoed too loudly in small spaces. My mother made soup, even though it was warm outside. She always made soup on emotional days. She said it gave her something to stir when everything else felt out of control. Mila sat at the kitchen table, drawing a picture with crayons while I filled out more court paperwork on the couch. At one point, she came over and handed me what she had made. It was a drawing of two hands holding a heart. Underneath, in big uneven letters, she had written, "The truth is brave." Then I cried. Not the quiet, hidden kind, but the kind that comes from deep in your chest when pain finally finds its way out. Mila didn't say anything. She just sat beside me, resting her head against my arm. That night, before bed, we returned to our truth jar. It had been gathering dust for a few weeks. I held it in my lap while Mila sat across from me on her bed. "Do you want to go first?" I asked. She shook her head and pointed to the folded note on top. I opened it and read aloud. "What happens when the truth hurts people?" I looked at her. "You wrote this?" She nodded. Her voice was quiet. "I didn't want to hurt Dad. I just didn't want to be scared anymore." I reached out and took her hand. "The truth can hurt sometimes, but silence hurts more. What you did today didn't hurt anyone. You protected yourself. You protected us. That's not wrong." She looked at the jar for a few seconds, then whispered, "I think we should keep doing this." "We will," I said. "Every night." That night, after she fell asleep, I walked into the living room and stood by the window. The streetlights flickered outside. Cars passed by. Life went on. But everything inside our world had changed. Damon no longer controlled the narrative. He no longer controlled Mila's voice. And for the first time since the divorce, I felt like I could breathe deeply, knowing I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. My daughter had stepped into a world far too heavy for her years, and she didn't just survive it. She changed it. The final custody hearing took place 4 weeks after the day Mila stood up in court. By then, everything had changed. The court-appointed counselor who interviewed Damon submitted a detailed report. It described controlling behavior, emotional instability, and a concerning lack of empathy for Mila's well-being. He denied everything, of course, but the video spoke louder than any of his words. Combined with Mila's statement, it was enough for the court to strip him of unsupervised custody rights. When the judge read her final decision, I sat in silence, holding my breath again, but this time, not out of fear. Out of hope. Full physical and legal custody was granted to me. Damon would have strictly supervised visits, twice a month, at a neutral facility with trained professionals. There would be no overnight stays. No more weekends behind closed doors. No more whispered threats. Mila's voice had shattered that illusion for good. We left the courthouse in silence that day. Mila held my hand as we walked down the long exterior steps. My mother walked beside us, her purse swinging against her hip, eyes scanning the sidewalk for Damon, though we knew he wouldn't approach. He hadn't spoken to me since the first hearing. I was fine with that. Later that evening, we went to a small diner, Mila's favorite. The one with red booths and animal-shaped pancakes. She sat across from me and asked, "Is it over now?" I didn't lie, I said. "It's safer now. We're not done growing through this. But we're not afraid anymore." She nodded and stirred her chocolate milk with a straw. "I'm glad I told." "Me too." There are days when I still replay the courtroom in my head, the way Damon's face changed when Mila spoke. The way her clear, calm voice carried more weight than any legal argument made that day. My daughter reminded me that strength doesn't always come from yelling the loudest. Sometimes, it comes from being brave enough to speak, even when you're not sure anyone will listen. In the weeks following the final decision, I started therapy again. Not because I was falling apart, but because I finally had the space to process what I had survived. I realized I had spent so much time trying to stay afloat that I never learned how to feel safe again. That would take time. But now, I had time. Mila started drawing more. Her sketches changed. They used to be filled with houses without windows and stormy skies. Now she draws trees with roots and children holding hands. She drew a picture of the truth jar and taped it to her bedroom wall. Every night, she reminds me to check it. One night, I pulled out a note that read, "Brave people still get scared." I smiled and told her, yes. They just don't let fear be the end of the story. A few days later, she wrote another. "Kids can protect adults too." I looked at her and said, "You did." I tell this story because there are women out there right now, sitting in silence, wondering if the truth will ever be enough. Wondering if anyone will believe them, over the person who knows how to present the right version of himself in public. I tell this story because sometimes, the truth doesn't come from a lawyer or an argument in a courtroom. Sometimes, it comes from a child who has seen more than she should, and decides that staying quiet is no longer an option. I used to think that being a good mother meant protecting Mila from everything hard and painful. Now I know it means standing beside her through it. Teaching her how to tell the truth. Letting her see me cry. Then showing her what it looks like to rise again. We still have hard days, but they don't define us. We're not the scared versions of ourselves that Damon tried to trap us in. We are loud when we need to be. We are quiet when we choose to be. And we are free. Mila saved both of us that day. She didn't just bring the truth into that courtroom. She brought the light. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was losing her. I felt like I was meeting her, truly meeting her, for the first time. If you're still here, thank you for listening. This wasn't an easy story to tell. But I believe stories like this need to be told, because somewhere, another mother is sitting in silence, thinking no one will believe her. And maybe, she just needed to hear this. If this story moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and leave a comment. I read them, and they mean more than you know. And if you want to hear more stories, real, raw, honest, and full of heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's more to come. Thank you again for being here. Stay brave. Stay kind. And never forget. The truth matters.